The galaxy was quiet, almost too quiet. For centuries, humanity had spread across the stars, building colonies on distant planets and dreaming of peaceful exploration. But peace never lasts forever. On a small colony called New Haven, located at the edge of known space, life was simple. The settlers worked hard, growing crops, mining resources, and raising families under two suns that painted the sky in shades of orange and gold. It was a place where people hoped to leave Earth's troubles behind. Benjamin Carter was one of those settlers. A tall man with weathered hands and tired eyes, he spent most of his days tending to his farm. His wife, Laura, often joked that the soil was more important to him than anything else. But Benjamin didn't mind the teasing. He loved the land, and he loved the life they had built together. Their home wasn't fancy, but it was theirs, a symbol of hope in a vast and unpredictable universe. One morning, as Benjamin walked through his fields, something strange caught his eye. The sky seemed darker than usual, as if clouds were gathering, but there were no clouds in sight. He paused, shading his eyes with his hand, and looked up. That's when he saw them, ships. Dozens of ships, maybe even hundreds, descending from the heavens like metallic birds. They glowed faintly, their surfaces smooth and alien. Panic gripped him instantly. Benjamin ran back to the house, shouting for Laura. "Get inside. Now," he yelled, his voice trembling. She emerged from the doorway, her face pale as she followed his gaze toward the sky. Without another word, they bolted into the house and locked the door. Over the next few minutes, the entire colony erupted into chaos. People screamed, children cried, and vehicles sped down dirt roads as everyone tried to figure out what was happening. The ships hovered above the settlement, casting long shadows over the landscape. Then, without warning, they began landing. Massive legs unfolded from beneath the vessels, crushing trees and flattening buildings. Dust filled the air, choking anyone who dared to step outside. Benjamin peeked through a crack in the wooden shutters, his heart pounding. He could see figures moving near the largest ship. They weren't human. The aliens were tall, much taller than any person, with bodies covered in shiny armor that reflected the sunlight. Their heads were elongated, and their eyes glowed faintly, giving them an otherworldly appearance. They moved with precision, scanning the area with devices that emitted soft beeping sounds. Benjamin clenched his fists, trying to stay calm. Whatever these creatures were, they weren't here for a friendly visit. Soon, a loud voice boomed across the colony, amplified by some kind of speaker. It spoke in broken English, each word heavy and mechanical. "This is Commander Vrax of the Zorathian Empire. You are now under our control. Surrender immediately." The message repeated itself, echoing ominously. Some colonists froze in fear, while others grabbed whatever weapons they could find. Rifles, knives, even farming tools. Benjamin knew they couldn't fight these beings, not with their primitive weapons, but surrender felt wrong too. He turned to Laura, who stood nearby, clutching the shotgun tightly. Her hands shook, but her expression was resolute. "What do we do?" she asked quietly. Benjamin hesitated, his mind racing. Finally, he took a deep breath. "We wait," he said. "We don't know what they want yet. We can't just give up." Outside, the Zorathians continued their advance, marching in perfect formation. They stopped near the center of the colony, where a group of settlers had gathered, unsure of what to do. One man stepped forward nervously, raising his hands in a gesture of peace. The aliens watched him silently, their glowing eyes unreadable. For a moment, it seemed like communication might be possible. But then, without warning, one of the Zorathians raised its weapon and fired. The man collapsed, lifeless, and screams erupted from the crowd. Benjamin flinched, gripping the windowsill tightly. This wasn't going to end well. Whatever these aliens wanted, they weren't interested in talking. As the day wore on, the settlers realized they were facing something far greater than themselves. Fear settled over New Haven like a thick fog, but amidst the terror, A spark of defiance began to grow. Benjamin Carter, farmer and reluctant leader, knew one thing for certain. Running wasn't an option. If humanity was going to survive, they would have to fight, even if the odds were stacked against them. And so, the battle for New Haven began. The Zorathians had arrived, and their presence was overwhelming. The settlers of New Haven huddled in their homes, peering through windows and cracks in walls as the towering aliens moved with cold efficiency. Benjamin Carter stood by his front door, gripping a rifle he barely knew how to use. Laura was beside him, her shotgun resting on the table nearby. Neither of them spoke. They didn't need to. The fear in their eyes said everything. Outside, the Zorathians began organizing themselves. Their ships loomed over the colony like metallic mountains, casting long shadows that made the settlement feel smaller than ever. Strange machines rolled out of the vessels, scanning the ground and emitting low hums. Some of the aliens carried weapons that glowed faintly, while others held devices that looked like tools or sensors. It was clear they were gathering information. But for what purpose? Benjamin decided it was time to act. Staying hidden wouldn't solve anything. He stepped outside cautiously, raising his hands to show he wasn't armed, at least not visibly. Laura tried to stop him, grabbing his arm, but he shook her off gently. "I have to see what they want," he whispered. "If we don't try, we'll never know." Other settlers followed his lead, emerging from their homes one by one. Some carried weapons, others held farming tools or nothing at all. Together, they formed a loose group near the center of the colony, where the Zorathians had set up what looked like a command post. Commander Vrax, the leader of the alien force, stood tall among his troops. His armor shimmered under the twin suns, and his glowing eyes scanned the crowd of humans with detached curiosity. One of the settlers, Rachel Dawson, stepped forward hesitantly. She was a historian who spent most of her time reading about old civilizations, not facing alien invasions, but she knew more about diplomacy than anyone else in the colony. Taking a deep breath, she addressed the commander. "We are peaceful people," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "We mean you no harm. Why have you come here?" Commander Vrax tilted his head, as if studying her. Then, through the same mechanical speaker that had announced their arrival earlier, he replied, "Your planet is now part of the Zorathian Empire. Resistance is futile. Surrender your resources and submit to our rule." The words sent a chill through the crowd. Surrender. Submit. These were concepts none of them had ever considered. Benjamin clenched his fists, anger bubbling inside him. He couldn't let this stand. Stepping forward, he raised his voice. "We won't surrender," he said firmly. "This is our home. You can't just take it from us." Vrax turned his gaze toward Benjamin, studying him closely. For a moment, there was silence. Then, surprisingly, the commander's mouth opened, not to speak, but to emit a strange sound. It took the settlers a few seconds to realize it was laughter. The Zorathians around him joined in, their voices echoing eerily across the land. "You resist," Vrax finally said, his tone mocking. "You are small, fragile. Your weapons are primitive. What hope do you have against us?" Rachel intervened again, her voice steadier this time. "Hope is all we need," she said. "You may be stronger, but we will fight for our freedom. That's something you'll never understand." The commander's amusement faded, replaced by an expression that might have been annoyance, or perhaps respect. He signaled to his troops, and they began moving away, retreating back toward their ships. Before leaving, Vrax addressed the settlers one last time. "Consider this a warning," he said. "Comply or face the consequences." As the Zorathians withdrew, the settlers breathed a collective sigh of relief. But the tension remained thick in the air. Benjamin turned to Rachel, his brow furrowed. "What did you mean back there?" he asked. "About fighting for freedom." Rachel hesitated, then nodded. "They underestimated us," she said. "They think we're weak because we're small and outnumbered. But history has shown that even the smallest forces can win when they're determined enough." Benjamin mulled over her words. Determination wasn't going to be enough against such advanced enemies, but maybe it could buy them some time. He glanced around at the frightened faces of his neighbors. They needed a plan, and fast. That evening, Benjamin called a meeting at the colony's central hall. Dozens of settlers gathered, their expressions ranging from terrified to defiant. Benjamin stood at the front, addressing the crowd. "We can't give up," he said. "Running isn't an option. Fighting head-on isn't either. Not yet. But we can make them regret coming here." Laura added her thoughts, speaking softly but with conviction. "We've survived droughts, storms, and hunger. We built this colony together. If we work as one, we can survive this too." The next morning, the settlers of New Haven gathered in the colony's central hall. The room buzzed with nervous energy as people whispered among themselves. Benjamin Carter stood at the front, trying to keep everyone calm. Laura was by his side, her hands clasped tightly together. Despite the fear in the air, there was also a sense of purpose. They had decided to fight, not recklessly, but smartly. Rachel Dawson stepped forward, holding a stack of papers she had pulled from her personal archives. She cleared her throat and began speaking. "I've been studying history my whole life," she said, her voice steady despite the weight of the situation. "And I can tell you this. The Zorathians have never faced a species like us before." Her words caught everyone's attention. A man named Henry, who usually kept to himself, raised his hand hesitantly. "What do you mean?" he asked. "They're bigger, stronger, and have better technology. How does that make us special?" Rachel nodded, understanding his doubt. "Exactly because we're different," she replied. "Most civilizations the Zorathians conquer are either technologically advanced or physically powerful. But humans, we're small, adaptable, and stubborn. Throughout history, humanity has survived wars, disasters, and plagues because we refuse to give up. That's something the Zorathians don't understand, and it might be our greatest weapon." Benjamin listened carefully, his mind racing. He knew Rachel was right. The Zorathians saw them as weak, and that misunderstanding could work in their favor. But they needed a plan, something concrete to turn their defiance into action. Laura spoke up next. "We can't face them head-on," she said. "Their weapons are too advanced, but we can use what we have to our advantage. This colony is our home. We know every inch of it. If we set traps, ambushes, and hit-and-run attacks, we might be able to slow them down." The idea sparked excitement among the settlers. Jake Monroe, a former soldier who had moved to New Haven after leaving Earth, added his thoughts. "Guerrilla tactics," he said. "That's how smaller forces win against bigger enemies. We strike quickly, then disappear before they can retaliate." Benjamin liked the idea. It gave them a chance to level the playing field, even if only slightly. "All right," he said, addressing the group. "Here's what we'll do. We'll split into teams. Some will fortify the colony, hiding food, water, and medical supplies. Others will start setting traps around key areas, near their ships, supply lines, anything they'll need to sustain themselves here." Rachel raised her hand again. "There's one more thing," she said. "We should try to learn about them. Watch their movements. Listen to their communications. The more we know, the better we can predict their actions." Everyone agreed, and the meeting ended with a sense of determination. Over the next few days, the settlers worked tirelessly. Families dug trenches and reinforced buildings. Hunters fashioned crude weapons from farming tools and scrap metal. Even children helped, carrying messages between teams or keeping watch for Zorathian patrols. Benjamin led a small group tasked with gathering intelligence. Alongside Jake and Rachel, he ventured close to the alien camp under the cover of darkness. From a safe distance, they observed the Zorathians' routines. The aliens seemed confident, almost arrogant, in their superiority. They rarely posted guards far from their ships, assuming the humans posed no real threat. "They're not expecting resistance," Jake whispered as they crouched behind a rocky outcrop. "This could work in our favor." Rachel scribbled notes on a piece of paper. jotting down details about the aliens' equipment and patterns. "If we target their supply lines first," she murmured, "we can cut off their resources and force them to retreat." Benjamin nodded, feeling a flicker of hope. For the first time since the Zorathians arrived, he felt like they had a chance, even if it was a slim one. When they returned to the colony, Benjamin shared their findings with the others. Morale was higher than it had been in days. People worked harder, driven by the belief that they could protect their home. Laura organized training sessions, teaching settlers how to handle weapons and move quietly. The colony transformed into a fortress, its people united by a single goal: survival. As the sun set over New Haven, casting long shadows across the land, Benjamin stood atop a hill overlooking the settlement. In the distance, the Zorathian ships loomed menacingly, but closer to home, he saw lights flickering in windows and heard the faint hum of activity. Humanity was preparing to fight back, not with brute strength, but with ingenuity and courage. For now, the battle belonged to them, and Benjamin vowed to make the Zorathians regret ever setting foot on New Haven. The first strike came 2 nights later. Benjamin Carter led a small team of settlers, including Jake Monroe and Rachel Dawson, into the darkness. The plan was simple but risky: sabotage one of the Zorathians' supply depots. If they succeeded, it would weaken the aliens' hold on the colony and show them that humanity wasn't as helpless as they thought. The team moved silently through the dry fields outside New Haven, sticking to shadows and avoiding open spaces. Each person carried a backpack filled with tools and homemade explosives. Laura had stayed behind to coordinate the defenses in case the Zorathians retaliated. Though Benjamin trusted his wife completely, leaving her behind felt like carrying a weight on his shoulders. Still, he pushed forward, focusing on the mission. The supply depot was located near the edge of the alien camp, close enough to their massive ships to be protected, but far enough to allow quick access for workers. From their hiding spot behind a cluster of rocks, Benjamin and his team watched as Zorathian drones hovered lazily above the area. The aliens themselves seemed confident, almost careless. Only a handful of guards patrolled the perimeter, their glowing eyes scanning the ground without much urgency. "This is our chance," Benjamin whispered, turning to his team. "Jake, you take out the drones. Rachel, cover him. I'll handle the guards." Jake nodded, pulling a makeshift launcher from his pack. It was crude, a metal tube strapped to a wooden frame, but it worked. He loaded a projectile designed to emit an electromagnetic pulse, something the settlers had cobbled together using old tech from Earth. Taking careful aim, he fired. The projectile hit its mark, sending a bright flash of light across the sky. The drones sputtered, their lights flickering before they crashed to the ground. "Move," Benjamin hissed, signaling for the others to follow. They sprinted toward the depot, staying low to avoid detection. The Zorathian guards turned their heads, confused by the sudden loss of their drones. Before they could react, Benjamin threw a smoke bomb, filling the air with thick gray clouds. In the chaos, he and Jake took down the guards quickly, using blunt weapons to knock them unconscious. Rachel hurried to the supply crates stacked neatly inside the depot. She opened one and frowned. "Weapons," she muttered under her breath. "Lots of them." She placed several explosive charges around the crates, setting timers so they would detonate minutes after the team retreated. As they finished planting the explosives, a loud alarm blared through the air. One of the fallen guards must have triggered it before losing consciousness. Red lights flashed across the camp, and shouts echoed in the distance. The Zorathians were coming. "Time to go," Benjamin shouted, grabbing Rachel's arm and pulling her toward the exit. The team ran as fast as they could, dodging between rocks and patches of tall grass. Behind them, the supply depot erupted in a fiery explosion, lighting up the night sky. The shockwave knocked Benjamin off his feet, but Jake hauled him up just in time to keep moving. They didn't stop until they reached the safety of the colony's outer defenses. Back at the settlement, the settlers cheered when they saw the flames in the distance. Laura rushed to Benjamin, relief washing over her face. "Did it work?" she asked, her voice trembling. "It worked," Benjamin replied, breathing heavily. "We hit them where it hurts. That'll slow them down." But their victory was short-lived. By morning, the Zorathians began adapting. Drones returned to the skies, scanning the area with renewed intensity. Patrols grew larger and more frequent, their movements deliberate and cautious. Clearly, the aliens were taking the settlers seriously now. Still, the attack had accomplished more than just damaging supplies. It gave the colonists hope. For the first time, they saw that the Zorathians weren't invincible. Word of the successful raid spread quickly, inspiring other settlements nearby to resist as well. Messages arrived from neighboring colonies, pledging support and sharing tactics. Benjamin called another meeting to discuss the next steps. "We showed them we can fight back," he said, addressing the crowd. "But this isn't over. They'll come harder and faster now. We need to stay ahead of them." Rachel spoke up, holding a map she had drawn based on their observations. "Their main base is still vulnerable," she said. "If we target their communication hubs, we can disrupt their coordination. It won't destroy them, but it will give us more time." Jake nodded in agreement. "And we should keep hitting their supply lines. Without resources, they'll struggle to maintain control." The days following the successful sabotage of the Zorathian supply depot were a mix of triumph and tension. The settlers celebrated their small victory, but they also knew it wouldn't last long. The aliens had grown more aggressive, their movements sharper and more calculated. Drones buzzed constantly overhead, scanning every inch of the colony's surroundings. Patrols swept through the area with brutal efficiency, searching for any sign of resistance. Benjamin Carter spent most of his time planning the next move. He gathered Jake Monroe, Rachel Dawson, and a few others in the central hall to discuss strategy. "We hit them once," he said, pointing at a crude map on the table. "But now, they're watching us closer. We need to stay unpredictable." Rachel nodded, her eyes scanning the map. "Their communication hubs are still weak points," she reminded everyone. "If we can disrupt those, we'll slow down their coordination. It might buy us enough time to prepare for a bigger strike." Jake leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. "Easier said than done," he muttered. "They've doubled their guards around key areas. Getting close won't be easy." Benjamin clenched his jaw, thinking hard. "Then we'll have to draw them away," he said finally. "Divide their forces. If we create a distraction far from the hub, it'll give us a chance to slip in unnoticed." The group agreed, though the plan came with risks. Benjamin assigned teams for both tasks, one to set up the diversion and another to infiltrate the communication hub. Jake volunteered to lead the infiltration team, while Laura stayed behind to oversee the colony's defenses. Despite her protests, Benjamin insisted she remain safe. "We need someone here to keep things running," he told her firmly. Reluctantly, she agreed. That night, the operation began. A small group of settlers, armed with flares and noisemakers, crept toward the edge of the alien camp. Their job was simple: make enough noise to lure the Zorathians away from their main base. As they reached position, they lit the flares and banged metal against rocks, creating a cacophony that echoed across the plains. The ruse worked. Zorathian patrols rushed toward the sound, weapons drawn and drones scanning frantically. Meanwhile, Jake and his team slipped past the distracted guards, heading straight for the communication hub. The structure loomed ahead, its surface covered in glowing panels and strange symbols. It looked alien in every way: cold, mechanical, and impenetrable. "This is it," Jake whispered, crouching behind a low wall. "Let's move fast." The team split up, planting charges at key points around the hub. Each explosive was rigged to disable specific systems without destroying the entire structure. They wanted to cripple the Zorathians' ability to communicate, not anger them further by leveling their tech. But as they worked, disaster struck. One of the settlers tripped an invisible sensor, triggering an alarm. Red lights flashed, and within seconds, Zorethian reinforcements appeared, surrounding the hub. Jake shouted for everyone to retreat, but it was too late. The aliens closed in, their weapons aimed directly at the humans. "Drop your tools." One of the Zorethians barked through a translator device. His voice was cold and commanding. Jake hesitated, glancing at his teammates. Surrender wasn't part of the plan, but fighting back would mean certain death. Slowly, he raised his hands, dropping the charge he had been holding. The others followed suit, their faces pale with fear. The Zorethians herded them into a transport ship, taking them prisoner. Back at the colony, Benjamin felt a sinking feeling in his chest when he realized Jake's team hadn't returned. He sent scouts to investigate, but all they found were discarded tools and scorch marks where the explosives had detonated prematurely. Hours later, the Zorethians broadcast a message across the colony. "Your resistance ends now," Commander Vrax announced, his tone icy. "Surrender or face consequences." Benjamin clenched his fists, frustration boiling inside him. He couldn't abandon Jake and the others, but mounting another rescue mission seemed impossible. For the first time since the invasion began, doubt crept into his mind. Had they pushed too far? Were they truly outmatched? Laura placed a hand on his shoulder, her touch grounding him. "We'll find a way," she said softly. "We always do." As the suns dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over New Haven, Benjamin stared at the glowing ships in the distance. The fight was far from over, but the cost of defiance was becoming clearer with each passing day. The loss of Jake and his team weighed heavily on Benjamin Carter. He sat in the dim light of the central hall, staring at the map spread across the table. The lines and markings meant little to him now. All he could think about were the faces of those who had been captured. Laura tried to comfort him, but even her steady presence couldn't ease the guilt gnawing at him. "We can't give up," she said quietly. "Jake wouldn't want us to stop fighting." Benjamin nodded, though his heart wasn't in it. He knew Laura was right, but the Zorethians' warning echoed in his mind. Asterisk surrender or face consequences. Asterisk what did that mean for Jake and the others? Were they being interrogated, tortured, or worse? Rachel Dawson approached the table, her expression grim but determined. She carried a small device in her hands, an old communicator salvaged from Earth's earliest space missions. "We need to send a message," she said firmly. "To Earth. They have to know what's happening here." Benjamin looked up, surprised. "Do you really think they'll hear us?" he asked. "It could take months, or years, for the signal to reach them." "It doesn't matter," Rachel replied. "If we don't try, we're giving up before we've even started. Earth needs to know about the Zorethians. About us. We might be their first warning." The idea sparked hope among the settlers. Though they couldn't rely on immediate help, the thought of reaching out to humanity gave them strength. Benjamin agreed to let Rachel proceed, and together they gathered what little technology they had left to boost the signal. For hours, Rachel worked tirelessly, adjusting frequencies and calibrating the ancient device. Finally, as dawn broke over New Haven, she sent the message. It was short and simple. Asterisk, "This is Colony New Haven. Under attack by alien force. Request assistance. Coordinates attached." Asterisk. The transmission repeated itself endlessly, bouncing off satellites and drifting into the void of space. With the message sent, the settlers turned their attention back to survival. Laura organized training sessions for civilians, teaching them how to defend themselves and handle weapons. Children helped gather supplies, while older settlers fortified buildings and dug new trenches. Everyone played a role, no matter how small. But morale was fragile. The absence of Jake and his team left a hole in the community. Stories of their bravery spread quickly, reminding everyone of the sacrifices being made. Benjamin often found himself thinking about Jake's humor and calm demeanor under pressure. He vowed to do whatever it took to bring him home. One evening, as Benjamin patrolled the outskirts of the colony, he spotted something unusual. a faint light blinking in the distance. At first, he thought it was a trick of the eye. But as he squinted, he realized it was coming from one of the alien ships. Could it be a signal? A trap? He motioned for nearby guards to follow him cautiously. When they reached the source of the light, they discovered a small drone hovering near the ground. Its surface was cracked, and sparks flew from its damaged core. Benjamin hesitated before approaching it, unsure if it posed a threat. Then, to his astonishment, a voice crackled through the drone's speakers, not mechanical like the Zorathians, but human. "This is Jake Monroe," the voice said weakly. "If anyone can hear this, we're alive. Captured, but alive. They're studying us, trying to understand why we fight so hard. Don't stop. Keep resisting." The message ended abruptly, leaving Benjamin and the others stunned. Jake was alive, and still fighting. The realization reignited their determination. They couldn't let his courage go to waste. Back at the colony, Benjamin shared the news with the settlers. Cheers erupted, followed by tears of relief. Even Laura allowed herself a rare smile. "He's counting on us," she said. "We can't let him down." Rachel studied the damaged drone carefully, searching for clues. "This means the Zorathians are curious," she explained. "They don't just see us as enemies. They're trying to learn about us. That curiosity could work in our favor." Benjamin nodded, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. "Then we'll show them exactly who we are," he said. "Humans don't give up. Not for anything." As the sun set once again, casting orange and gold hues over New Haven, the settlers prepared for the battles ahead. The road was long and uncertain, but they had proven one thing beyond doubt. Humanity's spirit was unbreakable. And as long as that spirit remained, the Zorathians would never truly conquer them. Tensions within the colony of New Haven began to rise as days passed without further contact from Jake or any sign of Earth's response. The settlers worked tirelessly, fortifying their defenses and preparing for the next Zorathian attack. But not everyone shared Benjamin Carter's belief in continued resistance. Daniel Hayes, a wealthy businessman who had once owned several farms on the colony, grew increasingly vocal about his doubts. "We're wasting our time," Daniel said during one of the evening meetings. His voice carried across the crowded hall, drawing murmurs from the settlers. "The Zorathians are too strong. Every move we make only makes them angrier. If we keep fighting, they'll destroy us all." Benjamin stood up, his face tense but calm. "And if we surrender," he asked, "what happens then?" "They'll take everything. Our homes, our freedom, maybe even our lives. Is that what you want?" Daniel shook his head. "I'm not saying we should roll over and die," he replied sharply. "But there's no shame in surviving. Maybe we can negotiate with them. Show them we're willing to cooperate." Rachel Dawson stepped forward, her tone firm. "Negotiating won't work," she said. "They've already made it clear they see us as nothing more than resources to exploit. Giving in now means losing everything we've built here." The argument divided the room. Some settlers nodded in agreement with Daniel, their faces weary and frightened. Others sided with Benjamin, their expressions resolute despite the exhaustion etched into their features. Laura watched silently from the corner, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. She knew this kind of division could be dangerous, especially when unity was their greatest strength. After the meeting ended, Benjamin approached Daniel privately. "You're scaring people," he said quietly. "We need everyone working together right now, not tearing each other apart." Daniel sighed, rubbing his temples. "I'm just being realistic, Ben," he said. "Not everyone is cut out for war. Some of us have families to think about. If surrendering saves lives, isn't it worth considering?" Benjamin clenched his fists but forced himself to stay calm. "Surrender won't save anyone," he said firmly. "It'll only give the Zorathians more control. Trust me, Daniel. We can't afford to lose hope now." Despite Benjamin's efforts, whispers of dissent spread through the colony. A small group of settlers began meeting secretly, discussing ways to approach the Zorethians for peace. One night, Benjamin discovered evidence of betrayal. Plans detailing the colony's defenses had been leaked to the aliens. It didn't take long to trace the source back to Daniel and his followers. Confronting Daniel in front of the entire colony wasn't easy, but Benjamin knew it had to be done. Standing in the central square, he held up the stolen documents. "This is why we're struggling," he said, his voice loud enough for everyone to hear. "Because some of us are putting fear above courage. These plans were handed to the Zorethians by people inside this colony." Gasps rippled through the crowd as eyes turned toward Daniel. He looked pale, his hands trembling slightly. "I did it for us," he shouted defensively. "To protect our families. What good is bravery if it gets us all killed?" Laura stepped forward, her voice cutting through the tension. "Bravery is what keeps us alive," she said. "Running away or betraying each other won't save us. Fighting together will." Her words struck a chord with many of the settlers. Slowly, support for Daniel faded, replaced by anger at his actions. Though no one wanted violence, the colony agreed to confine Daniel and his followers to a separate area until the crisis passed. It was a painful decision, but necessary to prevent further betrayal. That night, Benjamin stood alone outside the colony's walls, staring at the glowing ships in the distance. Laura joined him, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders. "Do you think we're doing the right thing?" she asked softly. Benjamin hesitated before answering. "I don't know," he admitted. "But I do know one thing. We can't let fear divide us. Not now. Humanity survives because we stand together, even when it's hard." As the twin suns dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, Benjamin felt a renewed sense of purpose. The road ahead would be difficult, but as long as the settlers remained united, they still had a chance. And somewhere out there, Jake Monroe was counting on them to keep fighting, for freedom, for survival, and for the future of humanity itself. The settlers of New Haven worked tirelessly to prepare for the next attack. Knowing the Zorethians now had detailed plans of their defenses, Benjamin Carter and his team devised a risky new strategy. They would abandon their current fortifications entirely and set a trap deep in the wilderness surrounding the colony. The goal was simple: lure the aliens into unfamiliar territory where their superior technology would be less effective. Rachel Dawson played a key role in planning the operation. Using her knowledge of history, she suggested creating false trails, signs of activity that would lead the Zorethians straight into an ambush. "We need to make them think we're weaker than we are," she explained during a meeting. "If they believe they've cornered us, they'll rush in without thinking." Benjamin agreed, though the plan carried significant risks. If the ambush failed, the colony would lose its best fighters and leave itself defenseless. Still, the settlers had no choice but to try. Laura helped organize supplies, ensuring everyone involved had enough food, water, and medical kits. "Come back safe," she told Benjamin as he prepared to leave with the team. Her voice trembled slightly, but her eyes were steady. "All of you." The operation began at dawn. Small groups of settlers moved through the fields and forests, leaving behind tracks and discarded items to create the illusion of retreat. Meanwhile, Benjamin led the main force, a mix of experienced fighters and volunteers, to a narrow canyon several miles away. The terrain was rugged and uneven, perfect for slowing down the heavily armored Zorethians. As the day wore on, scouts reported that the aliens had taken the bait. A large detachment of Zorethian troops, accompanied by drones and ground vehicles, was advancing steadily toward the canyon. Benjamin ordered his team to take positions along the cliffs overlooking the path. Each person carried crude weapons or explosives, ready to strike when the time came. Hours passed in tense silence. The suns beat down mercilessly, and sweat dripped from the settlers' brows as they waited. Finally, the sound of heavy footsteps and mechanical hums filled the air. The Zorethians entered the canyon cautiously, scanning the area with glowing eyes and advanced sensors. Their arrogance showed in every step. They believed they had already won. Now, Benjamin shouted, signaling the start of the ambush. From above, settlers hurled rocks and lit fuses on makeshift bombs. Explosions rocked the canyon, sending plumes of dust and debris into the air. Drones crashed to the ground, and alien soldiers scrambled for cover. Caught off guard, the Zorathians struggled to adapt to the chaotic environment. Their weapons, designed for open combat, proved less effective in the confined space. Jake Monroe's voice echoed faintly in Benjamin's mind as the battle raged on. Asterisk, keep resisting. Asterisk. Those words fueled his determination. He fired his rifle repeatedly, aiming carefully to conserve ammunition. Around him, settlers fought with everything they had: knives, farming tools, even bare hands. It wasn't pretty, but it worked. The turning point came when Rachel triggered a landslide using charges planted earlier. Boulders tumbled down the cliffs, crushing enemy vehicles and blocking the canyon's exit. Trapped and disoriented, the Zorathians began retreating, dragging their wounded with them. The settlers didn't pursue. Their goal had been to weaken the invaders, not annihilate them. When the dust settled, the settlers regrouped, counting their losses. Several had been injured, but miraculously, no one had died. Cheering erupted as they realized what they had achieved. For the first time, humanity had dealt a serious blow to the Zorathian forces. News of the victory spread quickly to neighboring colonies. Inspired by New Haven's success, other settlements began organizing their own resistance efforts. Messages of support poured in, along with offers of supplies and reinforcements. Humanity was uniting, not just locally, but across planets. Back at the colony, Benjamin stood atop a hill, watching the suns dip below the horizon. Laura joined him, her face glowing with pride. "You did it," she said softly. "You gave people hope." Benjamin shook his head. "Not just me," he replied. "All of us. Together." Despite the triumph, Benjamin knew the war was far from over. But for now, the settlers celebrated their hard-fought victory. Against all odds, they had proven that even the smallest spark could ignite a fire, and the Zorathians were beginning to feel the heat. Months had passed since Rachel Dawson sent the desperate message to Earth, and hope was beginning to fade. The settlers of New Haven had fought bravely, but their resources were dwindling. Food supplies were running low, ammunition was scarce, and exhaustion weighed heavily on everyone. Benjamin Carter often found himself staring at the stars, wondering if anyone had heard their cry for help, or if they were truly alone. One evening, as the twin suns dipped below the horizon, a faint hum filled the air. At first, the settlers thought it was another Zorathian patrol. But then, something extraordinary happened. A fleet of ships descended from the sky, not sleek and menacing like the alien vessels, but rugged and familiar. They bore the markings of Earth's United Space Forces. Cheers erupted across the colony as settlers rushed outside, waving and shouting in disbelief. Captain Emily Shaw stepped off the lead ship, her uniform crisp despite the long journey. She was a tall woman with sharp features and an air of authority, but her eyes softened when she saw the weary faces of the colonists. "We came as fast as we could," she said, addressing Benjamin and the gathered crowd. "Earth received your message. You're not alone anymore." The relief was overwhelming. Benjamin shook Captain Shaw's hand, his voice cracking with emotion. "You have no idea how much this means to us," he said. Behind him, Laura wiped tears from her eyes, while Rachel clutched her notes tightly, unable to believe their plea had been answered. Captain Shaw wasted no time. She brought advanced weapons, medical supplies, and fresh troops to bolster the settlers' defenses. Her fleet also carried engineers who quickly began repairing damaged equipment and fortifying the colony. For the first time in months, the settlers felt a glimmer of hope. Reinforcements from Earth weren't just a lifeline. They were a statement. Humanity was ready to fight back. The counteroffensive began shortly after. Using intelligence gathered by the settlers, Captain Shaw devised a plan to drive the Zorathians out of New Haven permanently. The operation involved coordinated strikes on key enemy positions, including their command center and remaining supply lines. Earth's soldiers worked alongside the colonists, blending advanced technology with the settlers' knowledge of the terrain. Benjamin led a team tasked with disabling the Zorathian communication hub once and for all. This time, they had backup, armed drones, and energy shields provided by Captain Shaw's forces. As they approached the target under cover of darkness, Benjamin felt a surge of confidence. They weren't just a ragtag group of farmers anymore. They were part of something bigger. The attack was swift and decisive. Earth's weapons tore through the Zorathian defenses, forcing them into retreat. Explosions lit up the night sky as ships clashed overhead. Ground troops advanced relentlessly, pushing the aliens farther away from the colony. The settlers fought with everything they had, driven by months of hardship and loss. Commander Vrax watched the battle unfold from his flagship, his glowing eyes narrowing in frustration. He hadn't anticipated such resistance, or humanity's refusal to yield. As his forces crumbled, he issued one final warning over the communicator. "You have earned our respect," he said, his tone cold but tinged with admiration. "But the Empire does not forget. This is not the end." With that, the Zorathians withdrew, their ships disappearing into the stars. The settlers cheered, hugging each other and celebrating their hard-fought victory. Benjamin stood beside Laura, watching the last of the alien vessels vanish. Though the immediate threat was gone, he couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't truly over. Later that night, Captain Shaw addressed the colony. "You've done humanity proud," she said. "But remember, the galaxy is vast, and there are dangers we can't yet imagine. Stay vigilant. We'll leave a contingent here to help rebuild, but the rest of us must return to Earth to prepare for whatever comes next." As the settlers began cleaning up the wreckage left behind, Benjamin reflected on the cost of their survival. Homes had been destroyed, lives lost, and scars would remain for generations. But amidst the devastation, there was resilience. Humanity had faced an unimaginable foe and refused to back down. Under the watchful glow of the twin suns, New Haven began to heal. The battle may have ended, but the war for humanity's place in the galaxy was only beginning. And Benjamin knew they would be ready for anything. The weeks that followed the Zorathians' retreat were filled with both celebration and hard work. The settlers of New Haven began rebuilding their colony, brick by brick and field by field. Earth's reinforcements stayed to help, bringing not just supplies but also hope. Captain Emily Shaw oversaw the recovery efforts, ensuring that every family had shelter, food, and medical care. Slowly, life started to return to a sense of normalcy, but no one forgot the sacrifices it had taken to get there. Benjamin Carter spent his days helping repair homes and organizing teams to clear debris. Laura worked alongside him, her hands calloused from months of labor. Together, they rebuilt their small farmhouse, piece by piece. Though the scars of battle lingered in their minds, the act of creating something new gave them strength. "We've come so far," Laura said one evening as they sat on the porch, watching the twin suns set. "I never thought we'd make it." Rachel Dawson, meanwhile, documented everything. She wrote about the invasion, the resistance, and the arrival of Earth's fleet. Her notes became a record of humanity's courage, a reminder for future generations. "This isn't just our story," she told Benjamin when he asked why she was working so hard. "It's everyone's story. People need to know what happened here." As the colony healed, the settlers honored those who had been lost. A memorial was built in the center of town, listing the names of every person who had died defending New Haven. Jake Monroe's name was among them, though his fate remained unknown. Whether he survived captivity or perished at the hands of the Zorathians, he was remembered as a hero. Benjamin often visited the memorial, standing quietly before Jake's name. "We did it," he whispered one day. "You'd be proud." Captain Shaw prepared to leave after 2 months. Before departing, she gathered the settlers in the central square. "You've shown the galaxy what humanity is made of," she said, her voice strong but kind. "Courage, determination, and unity. These are qualities no empire can crush. She paused, looking around at the faces of men, women, and children who had endured so much. Earth will stand with you. But remember this, the universe is vast, and dangers still lurk beyond the stars. Stay strong, and stay together. Her words resonated deeply. The settlers knew their fight wasn't truly over. Commander Vrax's warning echoed in their minds. Asterisk, the Empire does not forget. Asterisk, someday the Zorathians might return, or another threat could emerge. But for now, they had peace, and they intended to use it wisely. In the months that followed, New Haven flourished. Crops grew again in the fields, and laughter returned to the streets. Children played outside without fear, while adults worked side by side to rebuild their lives. Benjamin and Laura planted a tree near their home, symbolizing renewal and resilience. Rachel continued teaching history, sharing stories of humanity's triumphs, not just in New Haven, but throughout the ages. Yet, amidst the rebuilding, Benjamin couldn't shake the feeling of responsibility. He climbed a hill one night, gazing at the stars above. The galaxy stretched endlessly before him, full of wonder and danger. Humanity had proven its strength, but it was only one voice among many. What lay ahead was uncertain, but Benjamin knew one thing for sure: they would face it together. Stay vigilant, Captain Shaw had said. And vigilant they would be. As long as humanity refused to give up, no empire, not even the mighty Zorathians, could extinguish their spirit. Under the vast expanse of the cosmos, New Haven stood as a beacon of hope. It was a small light, flickering against the darkness, but it burned brightly all the same. And so, the story of New Haven became more than just a tale of survival. It was a testament to the power of unity, courage, and the unbreakable will to fight for freedom. The battle may have ended, but humanity's journey through the stars was only beginning. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would meet them head-on. For themselves, for Earth, and for the future of all humankind.